All right, today we're going to talk a little bit about linking specifically with corresponding words within a text, but then also how to have your translations show up in parallel and see those words linked together, and also kind of explore what the interlinear options are for you. So let's go and open up a Bible. We'll go to John 17:1, where we're in Jesus' high priestly prayer. Now, you'll notice that we're reading it in ESV, which is great. And as we roll along, we see something like the Son, the Father. Maybe have some questions on. I don't know. We'll experiment with this in just a moment. So let's go to the visual filters here. Those are your three dots wheel. Click on that, and you can see corresponding words. Select that, and I have it set to do so on click rather than on hover. I think that's the better way to do it. So have it so that when you click on the word, it'll highlight it. Click corresponding words, and corresponding same lemma. Lemma is kind of logos speak for lexical form, or the way you would look up that word in the dictionary. So if the word is the same in a dictionary entry, you'd want it to show up as same lemma. So now when I'm in here, if I click on a word like these, now these words, and now all of a sudden this is highlighting. Now if you look very closely, down at the very bottom, I can't move my mouse to it otherwise it disappears, very bottom along the bottom bar there, it's telling me that the word behind this Greek word, this, is hutos. If I click on this, that becomes the green one. Hutos tells me it's a pronoun, a demonstrative pronoun. It's in the nominative case. It's singular. It's feminine, and it corresponds to the Strong's number 377.8. And then there's also LN, or Lunita, number 9229. So this is giving me information on this word that's underneath here, but this up here is telling me that if I click on this word, these also is showing up as hutos. Except for in this case, if I look again at that very bottom bar in fine print, it's a pronoun. It's a demonstrative pronoun. This one's in the accusative rather than the other one, which is in the nominative. This one's in the plural, and this one's neuter. And it's a different Strong's number. So by having this corresponding word filter, I might have, if this was turned off, I might have never noticed that these are the same words. Now, this is not an incredibly exegetically significant example, but we'll see other places in which this plays out more significantly. So that's with the ESV. Now, if I open up the CSB and have that off to the side and do the same thing over here, where I have the same word, same lemma, on click. Now, if I click in one place, it highlights it in the other resource. Here's a good example. So I have in John 17:1, the ESV renders this, he lifted up his eyes to heaven, but the CSB has looked up to heaven. But Logos is telling me because what's underneath the English is a Greek lemma, a Greek word, and that lemma is the same, it knows to highlight both of those, both the he lifted up or he looked up to heaven. So this is a great way to do version comparison. If you have multiple versions open, you can link multiple of these together, especially if you set the links together so that they scroll together. Because then you can just scroll on down through, and as something stands out and you want to click it in one resource, it'll show up in the other. Glorified, how does glorified? I have glorified. So here's a good example. Verse 4, I glorified you on earth. CSB renders this as I have glorified you. Now if I hover over this, it's telling me this is in the, this is doxazo. It's a verb in the aorist active indicative. And this tells me, by seeing both of these translations, that there's two ways to translate the aorist tense. It's either I could say it's I glorified or I have glorified. And both of those bring out different nuances of that tense. But it's helpful to be able to see two different translations side by side like this. So you can do that with any of your translations if you have the interlinear data behind them. So you may have some English versions that you don't actually have the tagging required. So there's going to be a limited number of English translations that you can do this with. If you're realizing you're doing this and it's just not quite working right, it might be that you don't actually have the interlinear data set behind that version. I know that's somewhat confusing if you've not worked with these much. So that's 2 English versions, which is neat to see. What about what you can do within just one version? So I'm going to turn off that corresponding word filter. And now, just within my ESV, I'm going to do what's called an interlinear. That's the Hebrew letter Aleph and the Greek letter Omega. If I click on that, the drop down there, it gives me some options on an interlinear, and a lot of options really. The key is the surface, which is going to be your English translation. Whatever version you're in, the surface is that. But then beneath the surface is the manuscript. Those are really the 2 keys that you want to have, is the surface and the manuscript. The manuscript transliterated is going to be the Greek text converted into how you would say it in English. The lemma is going to be what's the lexical form underneath that word. How would I actually look that word up in a dictionary? The root is going to be what is the root word related to it. And morphology is another key piece of information. So we're going to select morphology, manuscript, and surface. And now I'm going to click on those letters. And immediately I'm greeted with significantly more information than I initially would be looking at my English text. So it preserves English word order. So I still see the word order when Jesus had spoken these words. But now when I select that, I realize, okay, there's something going on under the surface here. And just this little bit of little section has a lot of data buried in it. So the first, I realize that what I see in English as 6 words, when Jesus had spoken these words, we actually have only 4 Greek words: Iesus, elaleisen, tauta, kai. Furthermore, we see that the order is different based on these little numbers here. Tauta, with a little number 1, means this actually shows up first in Greek. Elaleisen, with a number 2, says this shows up second. And Iesus, with a 3, says this is the 3rd word in the sentence. And kai is the 4th. So that's telling me some information about how these are arranged. And also I can immediately see the word that's underneath here. Now the NNSM is telling me essentially the same thing I would get if I hover over this word and just look down at the very bottom. The very bottom of my screen has that little bar that says noun, nominative, singular, masculine. That's exactly what NNSM means. Noun, it's a noun, it's in the nominative case, it's singular, and it's masculine. Now this word is a verb, and I know that because it says VAAI3S. That's verb in the aorist tense, it's in the active voice, and it's in the indicative mood. It's also third person singular. So lots of data that I otherwise wouldn't be able to see without an interlinear. And you could observe these things from parsing the Greek word itself. But if you don't know verbal parsing and you haven't learned verbal morphology, relying on this little morphology cue of VAAI3S is loaded with information for you if you know what a verb is, if you know what the aorist is, and if you know what an active voice is, an indicative, and person and number. So those are some of the things that are embedded within an interlinear. And I want to show you one other way that you can access similar information. So this is helpful if you're going to preserve English word order, but you're going to want to be able to see the Greek underneath it. What about if you want to start with the Greek and work the other way? So for that, you would open up SBL, is the Society of Biblical Literature, Greek New Testament. You're going to open up the Greek New Testament, SBL. Now I'm going to put that over to my left side, and I'm going to link that together so that now when the one scrolls, the other will scroll also. I'm going to make this nice and large print. Now, within SBL, I want to do the same thing, to highlight corresponding words, same word, same lemma. Now, if I click on tauta, one moment, corresponding words in my ESV. Now when I click on tauta, I see these words highlighted. And this is really, because there's not an interlinear option with the SBL, the interlinear option is for going from English and putting the Greek underneath. Unless you have purchased a Greek interlinear edition, this is the best way to be able to access word order and see it in context. So to work through and just say tauta, okay, what's that? Okay, these words. Elaleson, okay, had spoken. Jesus, okay. Kai, okay. And then this is interesting to notice that kai does not correspond to a specific word over here. So there's something in the way that kai is used that's perhaps challenging to bring out in an English translation. So that's just how you would use an interlinear and use the visual filters available with the corresponding words, same lemma, same word. And if you have it just as same word, when you're within, you're going to have only where does this exact word show up. So not just all of the same lemmas. So I usually have both so I can see the parallels between things like the article, tus, tan, he, tan, ha, etc. So those are all just different ways that you can get at the Greek text underneath. Hovering over and seeing what's displayed in the very bottom bar is your default go-to, and then doing the same in the English. And in the mobile version, you simply just hold down the word and it pops up that morphology panel once you kind of scroll down past the options of highlighting things. Hopefully that was helpful as you seek to access the Greek text that underlies the New Testament.